So, the first thing that I am going to say before we begin is I'm going to say a big thank you to everyone and Hare Krishna to everyone who is watching or listening from anywhere around the world, whichever time zone, whichever location you're in. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode, which is episode 516 of the Simply Inspired podcast. It's quite surreal for me to say that, but it is true. I checked. And today I am joined by a very special guest. I'm joined by Bruce Ragin, who is a Hare Krishna devotee, a member of ISKCON, and a person who really contributes to the lives of a lot of people. Now, suffice to say that Bruce will have his own definitions for exactly what he does and why he does it, which I will be finding out the same as you. But what I have seen so far is that Bruce shares some incredibly inspirational content, sharing ancient spiritual wisdom and combining this with our modern lives in the modern world. And as a consequence of this, he helps a lot of people by bringing more people to God's light and love. And really, I think Bruce is an instrument of God. I think it's safe to sum him up in such a way as that, and we will find out more about how that came to be so very, very soon. I would also like to give a shout out to Brihat Das as well, if I'm saying that the correct way, Bruce's friend and the person who introduced me to Bruce. You can check out my episode interviewing Brihat on this same channel. And with all of that being said, hopefully I haven't missed anything. But Bruce, Hare Krishna to you, and thank you very much for joining today. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you for having me. I am honored. Um, yeah, it's
Likewise,
good to be here.
likewise, I'm honored to be here with you. And I'll tell you what, no matter how many of these I do, as I mentioned, over 500, I'm always grateful for every single one. And I'm always amazed how we can connect around the world like this these days. And lastly, I'm always grateful to God for bringing me together with the right people because I'm always guided as to who to speak to in that sense, and I always pray on it. So, with all of that being said, it's great to be here with you as well. Now, I would like to start with a very simple question. I mean, it's going to be simple to talk about. I don't suppose it would have been simple to live through, but um, but that is how your spiritual path began and how you actually began your search for the role that you have now. And as I've already said, I imagine it's very easy for me to ask that question in a sentence, but I would also imagine that in your life, maybe it took a little bit longer. So, in terms of your upbringing, where you come from, and the beginnings of your interest in spirituality, may we talk a little bit about where that aspect began for you, please, Bruce? Thank you.
Yes. Um, I'll try my best to answer these questions. And yeah.
You'll do
So
great. You'll do great.
I suppose I'll start at my childhood. Um, as a kid, I was always considered the odd one out. I was always like doing weird things that other kids didn't like. And so I was kind of isolated uh, from elementary school through middle school to high school. And it was like I was having a midlife crisis, even like back then, because I would wonder, is the rest of my life going to be like this, like isolation, this loneliness? And I think it was like a big reality check for life or what the real world could be. Um, and I thought I was gonna have to suffer like that throughout my entire life. Uh, and that lasted till high school. When I got out of high school, I didn't go to college. I had started working. I didn't go to college because I didn't like school. And when I started working, it gave me a lot of hope because I had the power to control my environment and my surroundings. I could buy things, and a lot of things I had wanted to buy all the time, but my family wasn't very wealthy, so I couldn't get the things I wanted. I had wanted expensive clothes and just so many things. And while I was working, I started working in a hospital in the dish room, cleaning up the dishes. Um, and I saw people wearing scrubs. So when I saw people wearing scrubs, I was like, "Oh, I could do that too." Like it gave me inspiration. And around this time is when I'd say my spiritual journey started because I'm sorry, I don't know what necessarily ignited it.
That's okay. That's okay. But was it, if I may just jump in at this point, Bruce? It's okay if you don't know what ignited it because this is a journey, not a destination, and maybe that will become clearer in retrospect, as these things often do. You know, when we look back, it's sometimes clearer than when we were actually there. But in terms of, let's go forward slightly then to your first um, associations with spiritual people, or maybe the first spiritual literature that you read. Because when I'm asking these questions, as I've mentioned, it's not to put you on a pedestal or anything like that. It's just to show that people can find a meaningful path in life, and it's the fact that you found a wonderful, meaningful path. And I sit with you now, and you seem so serene. You seem so happy and content. And I'm sure that that's work in progress, as it is for all of us. But that is also testament to the power of your practices and the path that you found. And I have to make it clear that when I say I'm not putting you on a pedestal, I'm not putting you there to be like a perfect person or anything. I'm just showing the authenticity of your journey so that if people look at you, they think, okay, maybe I could do something like that. Maybe I could find peace. Maybe I could find meaning. All of these kinds of things. So, in terms of that time, you saw the people wearing scrubs. Was there a particular, like, maybe you started reading some books, maybe you met a monk or something like that occurred? Let's talk about that, please. Thank you.
All right. Um, I was Christian at that time. I wasn't a practicing Christian. I had faith in Jesus. I loved Jesus. At the same time, I also believed in ancient aliens. I used to watch that TV show all the time. Um, and I believed in things like reincarnation.
Okay.
So around that time, I prayed to God and I said, God, please forgive me, but I'm about to let myself have an open mind. I'm about to look into these subjects of reincarnation, ancient civilizations, meditating. And I sincerely asked God to please forgive me if I'm doing things that are not in the Bible's faith, not within Christian faith. Um,
Okay.
so I started looking into those things. I started meditating. I started reading various books. I read Power versus Force. I love that book. And I read other books by David R. Hawkins. I read The Alchemist. I read The Autobiography of a Yogi. I was very much into mysticism, and I wanted to reach enlightenment. That was something I had really wanted. And something I came to understand is that reaching enlightenment would be an almost impossible objective. So my goal wasn't to become enlightened, but to become closer to getting enlightened, make a little bit of progress because I understood reincarnation. So I wanted to make a little bit more progress each lifetime. And there was a lot of problems in my life. I had the meditation, I had the crystals, I had became vegetarian, but I was so alone. And I wanted other people to do this with. And I'm sorry, as I'm saying this, there's like so many things coming into my head that I want to say, but then I'm like moving forward and it's a lot of pressure.
You're
Um,
doing great. You're doing great, Bruce. Now what I'm going to do,
so
I'm going to just jump in with one other thing again. That's really important. I'd like you to consider, and I am sorry because there's a tiny lag sometimes with the time, but hopefully the signal's okay. I'm just going to say that please keep in mind, you know, when you said about when you were young and you felt the sense of loneliness and that kind of thing. I'd like you to keep in mind that if there's other people out there who feel the same way, right? Whether they're sort of young, very young people, or whether they're adults or anything, and they feel that they don't have their place to fit, please keep in mind that in many ways you are speaking to them with this talk, and you're encouraging people who have that experience, which I've also been through myself, by the way, and I relate very much to quite a bit of what you're saying actually, but that's another story. But those people out there, in a way, you're almost speaking to your younger self. So that's a way to feel a bit less pressure because you're almost speaking to people who are in the position of your younger self. So okay, so you opened up your mind, you opened up your heart, and you asked God for forgiveness, and you were reading. And when did you first meet any other spiritual practitioners or any other Hare Krishna devotees, particularly, or any other maybe you met like Buddhist monks or some other. I mean, like my journey started with meeting a Buddhist monk, for example, Tibetan monk in particular. So maybe you had experiences like that. But when was the first time you started sort of meeting like-minded individuals during this? Did it happen at that time, or did that come a bit later?
it came a bit later.
Okay.
Um, so a few years after I started my spiritual journey, uh, I want to say I became very depressed because I had a good paying job and I had a girlfriend and I had my own spot. I quit my job, I lost my spot, and I lost my girlfriend. Moved back into my parents' house, and I wanted to reignite my spiritual flame after a couple of years of being depressed. So, in the process of trying to reignite my spiritual flame, I started going to a hot yoga studio, and I saw that the hot yoga studio was going to Costa Rica for a yoga retreat. And when I went there, I was like struggling to connect with the other yoga practitioners. So I talked to the owner of the yoga studio and I told her that I like spirituality and philosophy. And she suggested to me that when we get back to Philadelphia, I want you to go to this place called Bhakti Garden. So we got back to Philadelphia. I go to Bhakti Garden. And when I walk in, I see these guys with bald heads and saffron robes. And I was so excited to see them because I had always wanted to talk to monks. And it was great. They accepted me in and let they wanted to talk to me. And they had vegetarian food. I was vegetarian. They had good music, and it was like the perfect fit, the perfect match.
Wow, that is very cool. Okay, so there you go. So breaking through the barriers and meeting people of the same, I don't know, people throw these different terms like your tribe, your soul group, your, people on the same frequency, whatever you want to call it, people who understood you. I think that is very, very cool. Now, when it comes to this, okay, so you met these guys, yeah, and then the decision to actually join and become a monk yourself. And if it ever lags or you can't, if it ever cuts out and you need to ask me something, just ask me. If you don't hear anything, don't worry too much. But yeah, the decision to actually join and the decision to commit yourself to this life is, a very brave and a very admirable decision and not an easy one. And the reason I say that, Bruce, is one of the things I really like about you is your authenticity. in the sense that you stand up and allow yourself to be counted, if you like, and say, look, this is what I represent in the world, and this is who I am, and and I love that because we need more people like that. I mean, these days people are always trying to fit in with the in crowd, and with social media and things, people are always comparing themselves. And now, I appreciate you've always felt a bit different, and I don't know, maybe you are in some ways, but you stood up and said, hey, this is me. And I want to say to you, yeah, it's not a question, but I've got all the respect in the world for that because that takes a massive amount of courage. And so the reason I'm asking you that question about like when you joined in and said, okay, I'm going to become a monk, or I'm going to become a full time practitioner, if you like, or however you define that. Um, how did that happen? I mean, was that like a snap decision, or was that kind of more in a series of stages for you at that time, if that makes sense?
Yes. It was definitely in a more series of stages because when I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, it had a lot of ideas that I liked, and at the same time, it required me to open up my mind to more possibilities, um, and ideas that I wasn't used to. Like our philosophy is oneness and difference simultaneously. I was used to just oneness. So with the difference, there becomes a aspect of outside of you, I feel like. And I had to get used to that. There's an authority now. I didn't like that because previously I was just spiritual. So it took trust for me to accept that authority. And the trust came in ways of personal relationships. So the deeper and more developed the personal relationships got, the more I was able to trust. And with the personal relationships, it's a struggle for me because I grew up alone. I didn't have people to talk to or trust. And I had to I had to the thing I had to trust was, do these people care about me? And the more I realized that they do care about me, the further I was able to go within Krishna consciousness. And
Okay,
yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so with this process of like becoming a monk, I'm going to ask you one question here as well, if you don't mind. Is how old are you now? Your age?
25.
Okay, so that's young. Okay, so I mean, actually, we're quite similar. I'm 27, right? So it's not actually that much. But when you're becoming a monk at your age, right? That's a lot of stuff to give up because everyone else is like trying to climb the career ladder. They're trying to like meet girls. They're trying to go out and do the whole party thing. Um, like on a personal level, right? I've done a lot of that stuff, and I look at it and think, okay, it's not really that fulfilling. I mean, okay, you try some things, but then it's like I can't imagine why people want to keep doing all these things for years and years in a lot of ways. But with yourself, I mean, when it comes to like giving up things, and don't get me wrong, I know what you've lost on one hand, you've gained in a whole other way, right? You've gained in like the love, the connection to the divine, the service, the impact you have on people, peace, contentment, and we'll talk about that. But in terms of giving up, like, making money the traditional way, I mean, you're probably living with a community of monks. I mean, I don't know how that works exactly, but, the whole celibacy thing, I know that's a little bit personal. I'm sorry, but, people listening to this are going to be thinking, that's a big part of the journey. And all of these kinds of things. I mean, how do you feel about giving up the shall we say, the traditional norm of what most people believe you should aspire to? And this is a global thing, but forgive me for saying this, Bruce, but especially in the US, where there's a very money centric. I mean, you love the color green, man, over there, and that's no disrespect to anybody because the American dream, is a great thing. I'm actually not really not knocking that, because the idea you can make something of yourself, it has a good and a bad side. But when you kind of, going to give that up and live the way you live now, what was that process like, and how do you feel about it in the present tense, if that makes sense where I'm going with this topic?
Hmm. Well, I was already kind of looking at the world, and I'll say the US specifically. I was looking at society and how it was running, and I was already realizing this is falling apart. Whatever we have going on here is not going to last but for so long because people don't care about the sentiments of life as much as they used to. And as that degrades, uh, families separate and become more degraded. And there was a point I realized that, and I thought I was going to have to create my own society. And so a different society, a different structure was already on my mind before I found out about Krishna consciousness. So when I came into Krishna consciousness, I was like, oh, perfect. There's a society that already exists that has different values. And when it comes to career specifically, I didn't have too much going on for myself, and I didn't have too many aspirations. There was nothing that really inspired me in that career wise. And when it comes to like women, or I'll say, the romance, I don't know what to say. Maybe if you ask another question in regards to that.
Sure, I can, Bruce. Sure, I can. I mean, first of all, I respect that it's a bit of a personal thing anyway. So I was a little bit like, okay, I want to ask this respectfully, okay, but at the same time, I think it's valuable because, look, in my opinion, in our culture now, and this is the same in Europe, I mean, it depends where you go, but it's a global issue that there's a very strong push, I would say sexually, in the way the media is and that type of stuff, which I really don't think is very healthy. I'm all for like people being in love and that kind of stuff, but there's very much an over sexualization, and so everything that I'm asking you, by the way, I'm thinking of like how it's going to help others. Okay, so it's not just saying, okay, I'm just probing into Bruce. I'm trying not to actually probe into you at all. I'm trying to use illustrations, and that aspect is an important illustration. I mean, look, I made the decision and saying, look, I may well um, get married or something like that one day, but unless it's a very deep soul to soul connection, and it's much more than just a physical thing, I'll stay away from everything else unless it's got that much deeper connection, because the physical stuff, it got me in a whole heap of trouble, and that's a story for another day. And it's really not worth it. I mean, unless you actually have the connection and that person improves your life and you improve their life and you help each other. So, for example, even if somebody doesn't become a monk, literally, they can still look at that type of message and say, okay, I'm going to consider my options differently, for example, right? So
Got
everything
it.
I'm asking you, even when you say, okay, look, you're not doing the career thing, that's cool, because then I can say, okay, somebody might want to become a monk like yourself, and that's also very cool. But even if they don't, they can say, okay, maybe there's a way that I could take my career to be more service orientated, for example. And by that, I don't mean like customer service, I mean being of service genuinely to people and helping people. Whereas obviously there's a lot of career roles out there now which exist to serve themselves. They exist to keep themselves alive, that they do the job to have the job so that they can keep doing the job. And it's very much just goes round and round like this. And I look at that and I think, okay, like with the things I do in my life, even outside of interviews, I do my best to contribute. So I coach and teach, for example, spiritually. I write, I do interviews. It has to have some meaning. So when I'm asking you these questions about your life, the angle that I'm coming at it from is like, okay, people don't have to look at this in black and white terms, but they can look at it in different terms than the culture scape that we've been given. Now, if the people want to join your movement, or if they're already members, I'm all for it because it's a beautiful thing. But even if they're looking at it more as a shade of grey, it's still healthier than what we've been sold, what's been rammed down our throat. So with the whole celibacy thing, I mean, I saw a video you did on this anyway with Brihat actually, because you put some great videos out there, some educational ones. But I saw the one, my favorite one was where you like woke up on another planet, you guys, and like he came out of the sea,
Yeah.
and you were on the planet, and you were like talking about the world and what people do on Earth and how they earn money to drink alcohol and it's poison and all of these kinds of things. I watched that. I thought, man, what a great perspective. That should really snap people out of the sleepwalking that a lot of people live in. And really, this interview is the same. It's an extension of that process. So coming back to the whole celibacy thing, or the whole principle of uh, for now, I mean, for this time in your life,
Hmm.
forgoing those relationships, I would maybe let's focus on the lessons you've learned from separating yourself from from women for the time being. Maybe there's some things you've learned about yourself or about the world from kind of taking a break from that process. Let's talk about that topic a little bit. And now you know why I'm asking.
Yeah. Hmm. So I'd say that something I've learned from it is that relationships aren't about, and this goes for any relationships, aren't about loyalty to each other. It's about loyalty to God. So let's say I get in a relation, if I was to get into a relationship with a woman, we're not with each other because we're loyal to each other. We're with each other because we're loyal to God, and we came together to serve God better together. And in that same way, even in friendly relationships, there's people who, if I had, if God was not in my life, I would not care to, interact with them. But because I care about God, I care about them. And so I build stronger relationships with different people who otherwise it would never happen. And even with my family I felt has always been like a little bit impersonal. But when I preach to them or when I read Bhagavad Gita with them, there's something there. I connect with them on a deeper level that I never connected with them before because we talk about things in such a way where it's igniting thoughts that never came up before. Hmm.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Okay, Bruce. Now
Yeah.
that's the topic I would like to touch on here, if it's okay with you, because I love that message about the heart-centered aspect. I'm going to call it. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's God-centered, but I've noticed this in my own life as well, where you know how they say like if we saw people's hearts and souls instead of their bodies, how different the world would be. And I don't mean that just for women or anything. I mean that for like, we look at somebody's status or something, we look at very superficial things. But since I've become spiritual, I look a lot deeper and, connect a lot deeper with people. So that's a great message. But also, what I was going to say is when it comes to what I said earlier about you standing up for um, what you believe in and your authentic self. And I know that, as I've said all the way along, you're an instrument of God. So I don't want to put this that you're doing it yourself because God's sort of working through you every step of the way. But somebody like our generation, standing up and being counted in the way that you are, there's obviously going to be mixed responses. There's going to be people who love it. There's going to be people who like don't know what to make of it. There's going to be opposition. There's going to be some sort of middle ground. And, you know, not to go off topic here, but when I started doing spiritual interviews like this, as I was doing sports interviews for a long time, and as my spiritual path these opened up, people looked at it differently. Some people thought, wow, that's really cool. Some people thought, wow, that's odd. Some people thought, is he, I don't know if you say this in the States, but have I lost my marbles, is what we say in the UK. In other words, have I lost, not that I ever had many of them, but people were looking and thinking, okay, if you lost the rest. And, so there's always different viewpoints. Not that that matters, because the only thing that matters is your relationship with God, and also what you see when you look in the mirror. What's looking back at you. Are you proud of that person or not? But still, I mean, for you to be who you are, I mean, people probably look at it from all different sides. And I want to share this message again, not just about you, but to illustrate the point of people being authentic and genuine and sincere in their beliefs and who they really are, because I talk with you today, and your contentment, um, and your sort of, like, you found your place in the world with this. It really shows. You can really feel that in your energy. But I can imagine that not everyone understood it. So when it comes to, like, the reaction from, your family, your friends, people in your community and all of this type of stuff, I'm focusing more on the people who know you, or like knew you before and know you now, and they saw the change in Bruce, which is probably more discovering the real Bruce, but that's another story. They saw the change from their point of view. How did they react, um, in that sense, like your parents and your sort of close people? How did they react in that sense?
Hmm. Well, my parents were kind of neutral to it. They were happy as long as I'm happy. And my friends, um, they gained respect for me because they're not necessarily like into spirituality, but they have some sense of religious culture. Like they're most of my friends are Muslim, um, and with Krishna consciousness, there's a lot more things in common than there are differences. So we can connect on the subject of God, and I can help bring them closer to God. And I talk a lot about God when I'm around them, and they gain a newfound respect for me. And when it comes to other family members that I have, like relatives, cousins, um, they're a little bit more jokey about it, but they're cool with it. And yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Well, again, the courage of your journey, the courage to, I keep saying this, but to stand up and be counted, and all of that type of stuff. I just think it's really cool. I just think it's really cool, and I think that, what they say, you don't stand for something, you fall for anything, and all of that kind of stuff. But it's much deeper than that, because, as I've already said, we need people in our culture scape who stand up for what they believe. Even if some people agree and some people don't agree, and there's mixed response, we still need to stand up for, not only for God and His work in and do His work in the world, but stand up for our own souls, because I believe in this day and age there's a lot of sort of mass hypnosis kind of stuff going
Hmm.
on. So you stand in opposition to that, which I think is really cool, leading by
And that's
example.
why I do it. That's a big part of the reason why I do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh
I'm
no.
um I'm really into conspiracies and I see a lot of the evil going on in the world. And so a big part of the reason why I do this is because I wanted to fight against that. And I realized the best way to fight against that evil was to contribute to the good. If you put your energy in the evil, you're giving more energy to the evil. You're giving them more energy to do what they do. But if you put energy towards good, where energy goes, energy flows. So that's what it was a big part of the reason why I am who I am and why I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
I love that, Bruce. That's very awesome, and I agree completely. I mean, actually, I had this conversation when I interviewed Brihat as well, where I used the term light worker, which he kind of picked up on and said something, oh, that's interesting or whatever, he said. But I use that term broadly speaking because, people like us are people who are bringing God's light and love into the world. And I just use the example of saying I use good and evil. But I also say to people, look, it's like night and day. I mean, you have to have opposites in the world, but you also have to choose which side you're on. And if you haven't chosen, the choice will be made for you anyway, one way or another you
Hmm.
choose. So you have to consciously wake up and choose that. So, it's a very important aspect, and it's also why I do these talks as well, is to fight back. It's exactly the same as what you're saying, because I believe that education in this context is the most powerful weapon, because a lot of this stuff preys on people's ignorance and people's fear, particularly. And a lot of fear comes from a lot of ignorance. So the more we can kind of educate people and get them thinking a bit differently, even if all the talks do is wake people up and think, man, I never thought of it that way, then we're doing our work. So I love that, and we're definitely on the same vibration with that one. Now, on the subject of fighting back against evil, you have a good social media following, you have a great presence, you make these great videos, and I know you do like some serious ones, some funny ones, like all different types of things. Talk to us a little bit about your reach. I don't know exactly how to define it, but talk to us a little bit about your forms of service and the way in which you um, preach and put this message across to people. Like you said several times about sharing from the Gita with your parents, speaking to your Muslim friends about God, all of these types of things. I'd like to go a bit deeper into that process of like how you personally take this message to other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hmm. So when it comes to being around my friends, I just have like friendly conversation with them, ask them how they're doing, and then they might ask me, what am I doing and how did I get into this? And yeah, it's just naturally occurs. With my mom, uh, I'll just ask her if she wants to sit down and read with me, and she'll join me, and her friend will join me, and that's how that goes. And when it comes to social media, outreach on social media, I just want to connect with people and help them see. And sometimes, like the recent videos we made, the skits, they're funny and they got a lot of attention, but it was a bit much for me. And I was I decided to I didn't want to invest too much energy into making a lot of videos because it is a little bit distracting for me at this point in my spiritual journey. And I'm trying to get into making Krishna conscious music. So I want to reach people on that level with some rap. And yeah,
Very cool. That is very, very cool. Okay, well, I mean, I understand what you mean, Bruce, because the spiritual journey obviously has a lot of inner um, focus and inner work and all the rest of it. But I hope that you can continue to balance and like make some videos and also not get distracted and kind of balance it out because I've got to be honest with you, even when I've seen a few of your videos, I've found them really helpful, really, really helpful. And I know we're focused on the funny ones, but even some of the, the serious or more traditional ones, I've seen quite a few. But even the one I said about with like the, Free Hat and yourself, he woke up on a different planet. He came up to the sea. He's like, where am I? And you were speaking to him about, hey, what do people do on Earth? And all of this kind of stuff. I thought, wow, what a great way to get the message across now in this era. And the music, what you said there about like Krishna rap and that type of stuff, very cool. So I hope that, it's Brihat said the same thing. He said that, it was very much distracting, like he needs to meditate and chant and do his thing, and you can't be thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for the next video? Um, and I do understand that, but at the same time, please keep making some because they reach people in a very meaningful way, I believe. And so, and the music, the Krishna music, sounds absolutely amazing. Because I know that, is it called kirtan, or when you're singing? I think it's called a kirtan. Or I've seen you guys like not only chanting, but you also sing like in the streets and things. But then if you were to take that and make it, like a modern way, very cool. So that does lead me to what I'm going to say is the final sort of topic today, because um, I like to keep these to about an hour so that people can take it in and practically apply what they've heard, because that's very important to me. It's not just to listen and think, oh yeah, that was cool, but to say, right, okay, I can actually put some of this into practice, and that's why I keep them about an hour. Is your future plans for yourself as a monk? That's the question. I mean, you're a young guy. We're similar ages anyway, but we're young guys, and people like yourself are the front runners of um, global change, I believe. Not to put too much on your shoulders there, Bruce, but like the new generation of light workers need to be, charging forward. And you're one of those guys fighting the evil. So when we map this forward, like, I don't know how far you want to go, a year, a couple of years, or whatever, just can you share with us any of your future plans that you feel comfortable sharing? You've already said about the music, just things like that, just, other forms of service and other forms of outreach that you plan to do, um, guided by God, of course, as you go down this path. If that's the topic basically.
Hmm. Well, I want to become more educated. I want to become better spoken. And so that when we have podcasts like this, I can, put the message out really well. So I hope to get better at speaking. And um, I want to become more of a leader. And yeah, I want to be able to connect with people on a more personal level. And I'm thinking about writing books. I have a couple ideas in my mind and on books I want to write. And something else I want to do is uh, Hare Krishna monks or just Hare Krishna bhakti practitioners. Something I like to do is book distribution. So I want to get better at book distribution. I want to do that on a consistent basis so I can reach people. And whatever temples we go to, I want to help them, cultivate uh, nice practitioners and warm up the community, fire them up.
Absolutely awesome. Well, all of those things sound absolutely amazing. I will say, Bruce, that from what I've heard today, you are a very eloquent speaker. You have a very good way of painting pictures with words and all of that kind of thing. So it's good to consistently improve upon that, but at the same time, you should be very proud of yourself for the talk that we've done today, because I read this thing, and it was actually a US poll, by the way, that they did, right, about the biggest fears in the
Mhm.
world. I tell people this sometimes. And they did this poll of like what was the biggest fears, and they had all these things on there about like earthquakes and heights and all of this stuff. But at the top, the number one was public speaking, right? So the number one was public
Hmm.
speaking, and the number two was dying, believe it or not, death. So more people
Whoa.
were afraid of public speaking than they were of actually dying, right? Now I was reading that thinking, okay, that's really interesting, because it's like I've never been afraid of public speaking or dying, and I love heights. So it's like I was thinking, okay, I'm obviously a bit different to your average list, but all joking aside, public speaking does take some serious courage, and what you're doing today is a public talk, like a sermon or whatever, to raise people's level of consciousness. And all I'm saying is, I want you to, again, I don't know if you say this in the US, but where I come from, you say give yourself a pat on the back. In other words, say to yourself, like, well done, because you have spoken very eloquently and very much from the heart. especially because we've been talking about vulnerable sort of topics, if you like, about your life. That takes double the courage as well. So I'd like
Thank
you to
you.
be, well, you're very welcome, Bruce. I mean, I mean it. I'd like you to be um, proud of yourself in that sense. I know you're a very humble guy, so you've got no issues with any of this going to your head. In fact, you can afford to give yourself a little bit of this because it's a very brave thing to do. Those ideas about books and everything that you said there, book distribution, writing your own books, anything like this. I mean, look, it's all very well to um, like for example, books, right? I read The Journey Home, which I mentioned, which was the first thing that ignited my interest. If you've heard of that with Radhana Swami, and I read
Yes.
that, thought, wow, there's somebody else who's on a search like me. And then there were things that he shared about like his gentleness, and I thought, wow, so gentleness isn't weakness then, that's cool because where I come from, it was always like, very sort of macho, and you have to be like that. And I was thinking, oh well, okay, gentleness, you got to hide that. And I was thinking also, it's not weakness. Like, people actually respect him for that. You can be gentle, but you can also be strong. But that only came across because it was a story, right? Now I'm reading the Gita at the moment. I've managed to get hold of a copy. I also have a biography of the founder of your organization. I always say it
Mm.
the wrong way. I completely murder his name. I have a picture of him in my room that I look at every
Srila
day.
Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada. Okay, I say it. Actually, I'm not doing too bad. And
That was good.
like you said, isolation. I read this stuff, but I don't have loads of people to talk to. But I have a picture of Srila Prabhupada in my room, and I have a
Perfect.
biography of him. I have a biography of him coming from Amazon now as well. I'm going to read about that story because that's particularly the story of when he came to the US on the ship. He had two heart attacks on the way. He prayed
Hmm.
and said, God, if you have work for me to do, then you know, don't give me another one, but I leave it in your hands, type of thing. And I read that story and I thought, wow, I mean, that is just going out on complete faith. And so I look at his picture every single day now in my room for a multitude of reasons, but the depth of faith and connection to God that he had is just, second to none. So all of these things that you're doing, like when you're thinking of writing stories and sharing stories personally, it's very, very powerful. And I just want you to take that away with you, Bruce. That there's a lot more that you're going to be doing, carrying the torch from this point forward. And when we stop recording, I have a little tip that I'm going to share with you about the books as well that might help you. But before we do that, I would like to thank you very, very much for your time, your presence, and the beauty of everything you shared from your heart and soul today. And I hope that this talk brings, even a handful more people to God's love and to a deeper connection with Him. So I just want to thank you very, very much for the fact that you've been an open book today, Bruce, and you've shared everything that you've shared. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me be here.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. It's been wonderful. It's honestly exceeded my expectations. So I am very, very grateful for that. And I will say Hare Krishna to you. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sorry about the bow. Like I say, I'm holding the phone with my one hand. But yes, Hare Krishna to you. And it's been wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel. And there'll be more videos coming soon.